So in this video, I would like to explain how to conjugate verbs in the conditional tense in Russian. The conditional tense in Russian talks about events that would happen or would be if some conditions are met. And Russian doesn't have any conditional perfect tenses like in English. In fact, the conditional in Russian isn't really considered to be a tense, but rather, it's a grammatical mood that expresses a possible or hypothetical event. Unlike the past, present, and future, the conditional in Russian happens when specific conditions are met, usually with words like если, which means if, and can be translated to the word would in English. What makes the conditional very different from any other tense is that it is constructed using a very simple pattern that only requires the conjugation of the verb быть coming before an already conjugated verb from the past tense. The conditional is very easy to remember because all we need is a conjugation of быть and a conjugated verb from the past, coming from the imperfective or perfective. This construction corresponds to how the conditional is formed in English, which uses verbs and past participles in sentences like, if you had come to work, you would have known. The conditional in Russian forms phrases like this because it's very easy to tell the difference between events that simply happened and events that would happen. First, we need a simple conjugation of the verb быть, which would act as the word would in English. The simplest, and most of the time, only conjugation that быть has in the conditional is бы. This word translates to the word would, and it's formally placed before conjugated imperfective and perfective verbs that come from the past tense. Sometimes, бы can be shortened to бы. This mainly happens when the word бы is placed after a word that ends in a vowel and is used within informal and typical conversations. But in a formal standpoint, the word бы will be used. Second, after placing the word бы before any imperfective or perfective conjugated verb, the meaning will change if the action is ongoing and continuous or if it's done successfully. Because Russian can change the order of the words in any way, it would be better to simply put the word бы after personal pronouns and before imperfective or perfective conjugated past verbs. As a reminder, because we're working with verbs in the past, it's important to understand the difference between the imperfective and perfective aspects in the past and conditional. Let's begin with the verbs работать and поработать. Работать in the imperfective past would be я работал, ты работал, он работал. This meaning applies only if the subject is masculine. Я работала, ты работала, она работала. This meaning applies to feminine subjects. In the plural, we have мы работали, вы работали, and они работали. The meaning of these phrases is was or were working because we have an imperfective form indicating ongoing and continuous actions. In the perfective, however, we have the same words but with the prefix po. Я поработал, ты поработал, and so on. Now, the meaning is worked because the action is perfective and was done successfully. This is what the past tense looks like by itself, and we can take these conjugations and apply the word бы before them, and from there, we have the conditional in Russian. Я бы работал, ты бы работал, он бы работал. This conjugation applies only if the subject is masculine. Я бы работала, ты бы работала, она бы работала. This conjugation applies to feminine subjects. In the plural, the conjugations are мы бы работали, вы бы работали, and они бы работали. The meaning of these phrases is not I would work, you would work. Because of the imperfective, the meaning is I would be working, you would be working, and so on. In the perfective, we have the same words but with the prefix po. However, the meaning now is would work because the perfective indicates an action that would be done successfully. This is how the conditional tense works in Russian. It's very simple, and it's hard to even call it verb conjugation because we don't necessarily conjugate verbs but simply add the word бы, and sometimes бы in special cases in the conditional. Also, it's not really a tense, but a mood that has the same pattern as verbs from the past. So let's have some more sentences with verbs that have different endings. Here, we have гулять and погулять. They both mean to take a walk and they end in ять. In the imperfective, the conjugations are я бы гулял, I would be taking a walk, masculine, ты бы гуляла, you would be taking a walk, feminine, and мы бы гуляли, we would be taking a walk. In the perfective, the conjugations are the same, but with the prefix po, and the meaning is would take a walk. Here, we have сидеть and посидеть. They both mean to sit, and they end in ять. In the imperfective, the conjugations are я бы сидел, I would be sitting masculine. Ты бы сидела. You would be sitting feminine. And мы бы сидели. We would be sitting. In the perfective, the conjugations are the same, but with the prefix po, and the meaning is would sit. Here we have говорить and поговорить. They both mean to speak, and they end in it. In the imperfective, it's я бы говорил, I would be speaking masculine, ты бы говорила, you would be speaking feminine, and мы бы говорили, we would be speaking. In the perfective, it's the same, but with the prefix po, and the meaning is would speak. Here we have возвращать and вернуть. They both mean to return, but the perfective version ends in ut. In the imperfective, it doesn't make sense to say would be returning, so in this case, the perfective aspect is more useful. We have a different version that ends in ut, but the endings are still the same. Я бы вернул. I would return masculine. Ты бы вернула. You would return feminine. And мы бы вернули. We would return. Here we have мыть and помыть. They both mean to wash and they end in it. In the imperfective, it's я бы мыл, I would be washing masculine, ты бы мыла, you would be washing feminine, and мы бы мыли, we would be washing. In the perfective, it's the same but with the prefix po, and the meaning is would wash. Here we have the imperfective идти and the perfective пойти. They both mean to go, they end in the unusual t, but their conjugations are irregular. In the imperfective, the conjugations are я бы шел, I would be going masculine, ты бы шла, you would be going feminine, and мы бы шли, we would be going. In the perfective, it's the same but with the prefix po, and the meaning is would go. Here we have нести and понести. They both mean to carry, and they also end in t. However, they are irregular in masculine subjects, but in the conditional, we only add the word бы. Я бы нес, I would be carrying masculine, ты бы несла, you would be carrying feminine, and мы бы несли, we would be carrying. In the perfective, we only add the prefix po, and the meaning is now would carry. Here we have лежать and лечь, meaning to lie down. In the imperfective, there is no irregular conjugation, and the meaning is would be lying down. In the perfective, we have a different version, which is лечь, ending in ech, which is very irregular. But in the conditional, we only add бы. Я бы лег, I would lie down, masculine, ты бы легла, you would lie down, feminine, and мы бы легли, we would lie down. Here we have мочь and смочь, which means to be able to or can. They both end in och, and they're both irregular. In the imperfective, it means would be able to, and in the perfective, the conjugations are the same with the prefix se, meaning could. In addition, I did say that бы can be shortened to simply бы, which happens when the word бы is placed after a word that ends in a vowel and is used within informal and typical conversations. This can be shown in phrases like это было бы смешно, that would be funny, and это было бы хорошо, that would be good. This is how бы works in context, but there is no point in providing a lot of sentences, so that's that. Out of all the conjugations that I showed, the conditional in Russian is very useful when it's put in if sentences. This concept is for a future video, but showing just a few examples will not hurt anybody. You'll often see that the conditional in Russian works with the word если, meaning if. This generally expresses a hypothetical situation where circumstances would be different, and you'll see that the conditional in Russian forms phrases like this. So it's very similar to how the conditional is formed in English, which uses verbs and past participles. Если я бы знал means if I had known. This sentence has the same construction because we're using the imperfective version of the verb to know, знать. Don't forget that the imperfective in Russian isn't just equivalent to the progressive in English. In some cases, it's possible to use any of these tenses from English to correspond to Russian. In this case, it doesn't make sense to say was knowing. So instead, we say had known, which is the past perfect. Если я бы знал, if I had known. Если я бы знал, я бы сказал что-то. If I had known, I would say something. Сказал comes from the perfective verb сказать. So here, we're using the perfective aspect. Если я бы знал, я бы пошел. If I had known, I would go. Here is more of a complex if sentence. Если у меня было бы время. If I would have had time. It's a complex sentence because we're using the genitive construction у меня, indicating possession. But now, we're translating было бы to would have had, as opposed to would. This is a complex sentence, but this is how the conditional is fully used in Russian. Если у меня было бы время, я бы пошел туда. If I would have had time, I would go there. It's important to note that the presence of если doesn't automatically make the conditional mood. But now, we're getting into the Russian subjunctive, which also works with complex if sentences, emotional desire, and the conditional mood with the word чтобы. All of these concepts are for a future video, so that's about it. In conclusion, this is how verb conjugation works in the conditional tense in Russian. It's based on the imperfective and perfective past, along with the word быть, which translates to would.